Hi, this is Linda from Talking Spatial with Sean Yoder, my co-host, and we're here with Ben Erwin, who is a friend of mine. He is our first official guest on Talking Spatial, so we need sound effects for that. We don't have any. Yeah! Anyway, Ben is someone who's an old timer in all of this. He is very interested in web-based experiences, immersive tech. He has launched the WebXR Awards, which are coming up very soon. And we thought we'd have him on the show to talk about that and talk about what his interests are and where it comes from and his influences and what he wants to do with it. So there we go.
All that, just
yeah,
a couple small things.
Yeah, it is early. So Ben.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. I don't know about this old timer business, but
oh, you've been around a long time. I have too. It's okay.
I certainly go deep when I do, but you know, there are 60s old timers, there's 80s old timers, there's 90s yes. old timers. You know,
well, you can choose which one you want to be.
And then there's a whole new crop of OGs that came out from like the Oculus Rift era, yes. and people who got the Palmer Luckey Kickstarter. That's like a whole class of OGs. I got my Rift at the end of 2016, but it didn't support any web browsing yet, and I knew that eventually we would get here. So when the Quest finally put the spatial web browser in and they developed the WebXR standard, from the outset, like the Hello WebXR experience that Mozilla created really sort of broke new ground, and all year long they've had such amazing experiences coming along. So I am all about the evolution of the web into an immersive six-off experience that will just sort of change the way people think about the internet.
So explain why you think, I mean, to me, and I said this in the thing I posted on LinkedIn, to me, it's about democratization and access. Is that what is it that attracts you to it so much?
Well, I mean, that's part of it, is the URL distribution model for content, as far as I'm concerned, is a preferable one to the app-based model. And back in the day, before everybody had enough bandwidth to be able to download and install every application, or there were online applications, we had CD-ROMs. Yeah. And so the CD-ROM evolved into what is now the App Store, and downloaded distributable software. And that app model found its way into the distribution stores for Steam and Oculus, and Apple will eventually be using their own app store to distribute Apple Glass apps. But the distribution model through a web browser remains the same. You type in a URL, you download content, and what really makes this different is what is at the core of it is the W3C WebXR device API specification, which allows JavaScript to talk to the hardware. And there are several other different languages and protocols and stuff that go along with it that are facilitators, like WebRTC allows for communication. WebGPU is a new specification also being developed with the W3C that allows low-level access to the graphics processor. And there's WebAssembly, which is a very low-level language. So all these things in combination allow really powerful access to devices capabilities that you can then represent. But the magic happens when you have 12 million JavaScript developers that are still developing 2D experiences that are about to discover that they can develop using JavaScript and several different integrated frameworks to help them rapidly prototype new experiences. And what I'm seeing in 2020, which I consider year zero for all of this, is that there's a variety of different types of experiences that sort of set an example of what's possible.
So how do you think the move towards hardware being a standalone headset is going to impact on this? Because if you don't touch the PC during the experience, and I know it's only the Quest right now, really, and time will tell which headset takes off and which version of it and which company. But Facebook owns Oculus, right? And they have their own app store, and they are the gatekeepers for the experiences. You can access a web browser, obviously, on your headset. But how do you think that's going to work with the standalone headset trend, put it that way? movement. It's not a
I
trend.
think that it's just a natural evolution for there to be competition. Personally, when I was a PC VR user with tethered USB HDMI cable coming out
Which
of
I
my
still
Rift,
do.
I always
Yeah.
felt there was a lot of friction, and the need to plug in a graphics card is going to remain for the high-end experiences until
Right.
the standalones get good enough. But competition's a natural part of the ecosystem.
Mhm.
And so Oculus isn't going to be the only player forever. Pico already has one, but it's really a matter of, they talk about how Oculus is the gatekeeper of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And there's all this controversy around Oculus, which
I know.
we don't even need
It's
to
a
go
different
there.
episode.
But
I know.
point out the important thing to point out, though, is that Oculus is also the one who brought us this Chromium-based browser, because
Right.
what Google did was Google open sourced its core for Chrome, and that's Chromium. And that allows other browsers to use it as part of their core. Internet Explorer, after 25 years of tormenting developers, Microsoft finally relented and killed off the Internet Explorer core and made it and integrated Chromium into Edge.
Right.
So that is a standards compliant browser now.
Right.
Opera uses it, Brave uses it, and
Right.
Brave is like Chrome without the surveillance capitalism.
Right. And Brave, yes. Yes, Brave is too. What do you think about, yeah, never mind. I have another question for you. I'll ask you later. Sean, do you have any questions, or do you want to talk about, I'd love to hear more about the WebXR Awards, but I want to see if Sean has any comments or questions about what we're talking about now before
You
we go
guys are
there.
coming at this from a different perspective and angle than I do, because I come from the simulation and gaming side of things, and seeing the I guess the advent and almost takeover of the standalone headset right now, for me, is I love it. I have a Quest 2 sitting here beside me, but I use it with a link.
I do too.
I use it with a link because I'm definitely more of I work in motorsport simulation. We do a lot of flight simulation. We do a lot of link stuff. So do you actually see, and I see this too, and it seems like, Ben, that you were saying that you see that the standalone headset, you think it's going to take over, or is there always going to be a place for a tethered experience, or when does I guess here's the question: when does the standalone headset become powerful enough to where it could actually run what I'm running now on a 2080 Ti?
Oh.
And how far out are we from that in your opinion? Because that is the holy grail for my ilk, if that makes any sense at all.
I don't think that there's a timeline per se where it's going to necessarily supplant the standalone is going to supplant tethered, because what's going to happen is graphics cards are always going to improve, and graphics cards power is always going to be able to shrink down into standalone headsets. And so what we're going to be seeing as you have this evolution and miniaturization of this tech continuing in to this decade. I mean, we're at a threshold now where it's absolutely amazing what's possible. It's amazing what the Snapdragon X2 chip inside of the Qualcomm, or the Quest 2's Qualcomm chip powers. And that's 2020 technology. Now, if you transpose that and you said that's 2000 technology, you can snicker, because it's like, well, that was 20 years ago. So if you look, we still had graphics cards 20 years ago, and they couldn't load any of the experiences that you have now. So we're always going to have better graphics cards. We'll have the 4000 series, the 5000 series, the 6000 series. Hey, Radeon's already there. But the evolution of the graphics card is going to continue. The proliferation of standalone headsets are going to be, but it's about form factor. It's about consumer mass market usage. And so industrial use cases that require really intense graphics will always require that premium connection, and that premium connection will always be there, and people won't mind jacking into their PC to be able to get that. But one of the things about WebXR right now is, I don't know why, but it's not available on the Oculus Link / Rift platform, but it's natively built into the Oculus platform. So what I want to see happen is the core software, like, so for example, Metachromium runs on Steam, and that is a WebXR browser. So that could run on a Steam device. And the more hardware platforms that either have a native browser the way Oculus does, or support a third-party browser like Firefox Reality or Metachromium, the better. The thing that I think is really important in all of that, though, and the reason that I'm advocating the W3C device API specification, is that we went through all, as a webmaster coming out of the 90s into, Web 2.0, and now we're entering into Web 3.0.
There's that OG.
The biggest problem. Yeah, the biggest problem was that you had to write workarounds for browsers. Things weren't natively supported in browsers. And we don't have to go through that again. The web developers of the future don't need to be tormented by having to make sure that the same experience is supported on different devices. There'll always be subtle differences and there'll always be workarounds, but it doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be time consuming, because in the agency world, clients don't care that something has a technical hurdle that you need to clear, and they're not willing to pay for it. They'll take the lowest common denominator browser. It's not working on Chrome on iOS 8. And, it's like, we don't need that type of thing going into the era. So I think that it's important that the industry and developers recognize the importance of rallying around a spec that allows these immersive experiences to be built in a uniform way into the future, and that remain backwards compatible.
Right. So the WebXR Awards is your baby, right? A lot of work. I know you're very sleep deprived. Is your baby?
Well, I got to stop you and thank you, because you built that statue, and the trophy for the WebXR Awards is what I think really made everybody believers. I took a concept, and you and I worked together, but that work of art that you did.
It is. Really, well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny effort, though, compared to all the work you've done there. And it's your baby in terms of, like, this is you believe in this, you want this to happen, you want this to get more profile. And so you're launching these awards to raise awareness and to get, participants, and it's working. I think you're doing a great job with that. Because when I mentioned it last night on a call, and everybody's eyes lit up, they're like, oh yeah, Ben, the WebXR Awards, like everybody's talking about it. So, I mean, kudos to you for that. What are you seeing in terms of, I know I'm actually going to be presenting one of the categories, right? But I haven't actually seen the list of, like, what are you seeing out there that you think is really amazing and pushing the envelope?
Well, I'll tell you what happened the other night. I had finished the nominations. I had edited the video that I launched this week.
Right.
And it wasn't easy to sort of make that final decision to fill out all. And then something came up in my Twitter feed that absolutely blew my mind, which was Dust Devil by Tyro VR. And that somebody made a Dune sandworm writing experience. And I'm a big Dune nerd.
I gotta try that. What's it called?
There's no way we're not going to nominate the Dust Devil, so that they didn't infringe on the Dune trademark, or Black & Decker Dirt Devil, but but nonetheless, it's pretty obvious what you're doing, and you're riding sandworms through Iraq
with the hooks. You have hooks to pull back the rings. You need your sandworm hooks.
Your things are you're driving a sandworm, and you have other sandworms going through the desert.
Amazing.
And it was completely any other experience. And so that was a last minute nomination. So that's just one example of things that I have seen a variety of, because this one stands alone. And the reason that I'm calling it experiences is because that's what they are. They're a variety of different experiences. Ada Rose Cannon, who's the chair of the W3C group, she just made a beautiful, simple koi pond in Babylon JS. It's the only Babylon JS built project, and it's sixed off. You can move around in it, but it's just fish swimming in water with trees and lotus flowers. But it's beautiful, and so that's another example of variety. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, there's another late nomination that came to my attention called VR Cybershop, which is the only Unity developed WebXR experience, because you can export because Unity supports WebGL. WebXR is WebGL. So some clever folks, Mozilla and some other folks have been working on this exporter, and they created this very holographic type of experiences with special effects. It's over the top sci-fi, but it's a 6 DOF WebXR experience. And so that's what I really want to showcase, is the variety of different things, because whatever your niche in development is, WebXR has got something that developers and creatives can take to their decision makers and their clients and say, hey, we can do something that hasn't been done before here, because it's a green field of opportunity to create these experiences.
I'm going to have to jump in and take a look at VR Cybershop, because Linda and I have been diving into the VCAT 5.
5.
Yeah, and taking a look around VCAT 5 and really blown away by that and what that has the opportunity to open up in e-commerce, or just commerce in general. I think the blending of e-commerce and what we consider to be regular commerce and entertainment has already happened. It's going to do nothing but proliferate itself. This VR Cybershop, do you know it? Can you actually stay in the VR world?
No, they don't have purchasing going on.
That's exactly where I was going. Yeah.
But nonetheless, it is an experience, and it's an inspiration to people. So, but this is where things are going. And, you know, when you're talking about marketing, advertising, e-commerce, and purchasing, where I haven't seen, and this is the bell that I'm ringing, is that, you know, there's money in this, and that we're right now reaching that juncture where there's enough of an install base, like thanks to how many Quest 2s there were under the Christmas tree this past year, there's enough of an install base now for marketing people to start allocating their budgets towards providing 6 DOF experiences for people. So what we're going to see in 2021 is big companies with big marketing budgets are going to go to big agencies and say, hey, this is awesome. Can we do something like this? And they're going to start scrambling to do that and provide those services, because they're being asked and they're being budgeted where they really weren't before. The opportunity has been there, but now I think that we're about to reach that critical mass. And as we get into 2022 and 2023, and there are more standalone devices, there's more competition, there are more WebXR browsers that support even PC VR, then we're going to start seeing the envelope being pushed in terms of what's possible in there. And we're also going to start seeing really creative adaptions of the advertising business model into the spatial space.
Right. So Ben, it reminds me, and I've talked about this before in other places. I don't know if you and I have ever chatted about this, and I'm going to date myself now. I think it was 1999, maybe. Yeah, pretty much. I worked at a very large digital agencies, one of the very first waves of digital agencies back then. And I think it was Barney's was our client. And we actually had a web-based, you could walk into the store, you could have, it was shoes on pedestals, and you could pick it up and you could look at it in 3D. I mean, it was really avant-garde for back then. There was no commerce tie-in, obviously, but is that what you're seeing in terms of the future of actual commerce, web-based commerce? And because you don't have to make it a VR, you can also do a PC-based VR and just have it be like the next generation of e-commerce experience. Because right now it's still like a catalog, right? I mean, there's little boxes, there's squares. Maybe you can enlarge them and you can like go, well, I don't know, is that going to fit me? You know, you can't change who's wearing it. The clothing. Like, it would be great if you could say, I have a scan of what I actually look like. I don't need to look at it too closely, but okay. And I want to go into this 3D based store, you know, the VR experience on the web for barneys.com, even though they don't exist anymore. And I want to try this on my avatar in this space. And is that the next generation of commerce? Instead of having it be an app, a Barney's app that you have to go to a VR headset, you have to try on, you have to, you know, start the app. Now you can do it with a web-based experience, much like we were trying to do 20 years ago. Is that what you're seeing? Is there an integration with customization and personalization that wasn't there before?
I have a layered answer to that. So
Okay.
The first part of it is the time factor, like the sort of, you know, you mentioned that in 1999, I mean, there are all sorts of precursors to this. I was just reading that Apple patented a VR glove, and I was just thinking about like the Aerosmith video
The
in
haptics.
90, and it was like,
Yeah.
come on, it's like, I'm sure that they're patenting nuanced little tech in there, but the idea
Of course.
haptic glove has been around since
Forever. Yeah.
Nintendo had the Power Glove how long ago? I mean, it's, yeah.
So, but you have precursors like SimCity, you know, which VR, you know, Fortnite isn't in VR, but they're fully spatial experiences. So
Right.
the e-commerce side of things, I think that before we get to WebXR and Sixtoff spatial experiences having a commercial impact, what we saw a lot of in 2019 and 2020 was the phone AR revolution, and that the market right now is focusing on, you know, the CAGR of AR e-commerce over the first half of the decade, because the device install is there. You have 2 billion people on the planet with smartphones,
Right.
and they have cameras and they have sensors and they have touch screens. And so you're dealing with 2D or 3D and 2D. And that's really kind of what I sum up the whole point of your question, is that you have 2D and 2D, 2D and 3D, 3D and 2D, and 3D and 3D.
Right.
And the whole previous thing that we've been experiencing is 2D and 3D. And that, excuse me, 3D
and 2D, right.
Go back to the 90s and you have like You Lead Cool 3D making logos, you know, that was 3D and 2D back in the day.
Right.
Now you have really nuanced, you know, powerful tools that leverage the power of a device. Like Metaverse Engine is one of the softwares that you can go online and you can create experiences, import 3D assets, light it, and then embed that into things. And you can have animations and heads-up displays and so forth. And this is a really great tool to be able to leverage the devices that are that are out right now. Fast forward a couple of years after Facebook's and Apple's devices, you know, become sort of the must-have device for everybody. They're going to come out, they'll be the early adopters, but then 2 or 3 years on, they're going to work the kinks out and they're going to have it at a price point where consumers can have it. At that point, then we're going to see the 3D and 3D e-commerce revolution. And what I'm saying is that we need to start preparing for that day now.
Agreed. Hey, listen, if you had a brand in front of you right now, say Nike was sitting in front of you, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say that they're a very visual they've always done groundbreaking visual work.
Mhm.
And they hire some of the best teams of creatives and artists and producers in the industry. And they hire the top shelf celebrity talent to endorse it. The idea of making spatial experiences and sixed off things isn't necessarily a new thing. Like Hollywood was playing around with it a couple of years ago, making experiences for the Rift and like Absolute Vodka with Dead Mouse and things like that. These are like free things that you can download. But what we haven't seen is the dedication of an ongoing campaign there. So I would say to Nike and any of the big brands, start a long-term evolution strategy to move into the sixth off domain.
Innovation should have started last year, if not a couple of years ago. Basically, I mean, it's time for those big players to jump in and push the envelope.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense.
All right. I'm done asking you questions, Ben. Do you have anything else? Sean, anything you want to ask or talk or any reaction? Ben, is there anything you'd like to talk about that I didn't cover or that we didn't cover so far?
Sean?
No, I'm trying to wrap my brain around the whole 3D interactive, like in VR sixth off experience. I know Linda and I have talked about this a little bit, and 10 years ago, I've owned a couple software companies that built the 3D assets, did physics development and sound design for motorsport simulation application. And we were working with Google Lively, and we were working with a company up in Canada called Just Leap In. And we were pushing to create basically it's a 3D UI, something that wasn't a 2D user interface, that wasn't text-based, wasn't your normal, video game. You sit there on a flat screen. We wanted you to, when you loaded into our games, we wanted it to be a 3D interactive experience from the time you entered in to the time you jumped in a car or a cart or a truck or whatever it was, and you went out on a racetrack and you started driving. So there was nothing to break the immersion. Is there any, I guess my question is there anything that you've seen out there that's heading towards that all-encompassing experience within the XR technology realm right now, where like I want a 3D user interface. I want a living, breathing user interface that you have to actually walk around in instead of experience on a screen. Is there anyone working towards that right now?
Is this because you were, or is this a comment on the VCAT 5 experience when whenever there was anything to buy, you had to go to a website? It's
partially that. Yeah. It's partially that. And it's partially because you get those experiences in life where you're like, I was too soon, or this team was too soon to really make an impact in this one area. And I really do feel that we were onto something, but even Google was kind of looking at what we were doing at the time, and they were like, they were like, we get it, but we don't entirely get it. And then we showed them the garage space that we created inside Lively, and you loaded into that, and then you could interact with other avatars in that space, and then you went straight from Google Lively into our world, and there was a seamless jump from one to the other, and there was no 2D. And I'm just wondering if you've seen anything out there where it's literally like from the time you jump in to the time you're done, there's nothing to interrupt the immersion of it being more like a real life experience. Does that make sense?
I see it again as an evolutionary process, and part of it is the install base, but at the core of your question is the UX aspect of it. And I think that this is one of the things that we have a long way to go on. Like I just mentioned, the Apple Glove, it's what's old is new again. And they're the biggest friction point right now in immersive UX is text input. It's absolutely onerous. And voice recognition isn't really that good. It exists. Hand gesture recognition exists, but it hasn't been put into enough practice yet. I think that as we see over the next couple of years, as there's more adoption and there are more experiences created, that there's going to be a lot more emphasis placed on sort of low friction navigation and standardization of things. And I'll give you a couple examples. So, one of the things that you do in various platforms is you open a menu that's pinned to your wrist, like VR chat has something similar to that. And so the whole idea of pushing a button on your wrist and seeing a menu come up, I think is one of the UX items that's going to be persistent in this thing. But there will be a lot more voice recognition, the ability to say, hey, I need to send you a message, and then it mutes the world around you so that you can speak. Here's a message. Like if you, Altspace is a perfect example. Just trying to send 10 characters of a message to tell somebody that you're late to an event in Altspace, trying to aim a pointer,
right?
Just that is a friction point that is a non-starter for a lot of people.
Trying to aim a pointer at text that you can't edit. So if you don't do it linearly correctly, you have to back up all the way there. I mean, it's things like that. Paste and cut is another one. Like you get a URL to attend something and you can't paste and cut it from the computer to the VR screen. I mean, all of that. Interfacing is bad still. That kind of stuff.
So what I see happening there is over the next couple of years, you're going to see innovations that get used by other people. Like we're going to start to standardize this input so that it becomes easy. And that's really the biggest immersion breaker that I can think of, is when you're trying to focus on something other than the experience, just to be able to do something normal, like communicate with somebody else within your world. So these methodologies that people have right now are not fully formed yet, but that's, to me, one of the things that really makes it an exciting time, because we're inventing all of this.
Yeah, it's a bit of the Wild West, right? Like the early days of the internet.
I'm waiting to see an Iron Man, like Tony Stark style Jarvis UI, where, I mean, it's somebody's got to be out there that's working on that. But the push pull and being able to actually grab a screen and put it wherever you want it, you can do kind of that with virtual desktop right now, but it's nowhere near on the level that I see coming. It's interesting to watch this stuff evolve in front of us, knowing where we were 30 years ago to where we are right now. My mind goes when I think about 30 years out from now.
Yeah, I don't even know if you can.
Exactly, and AI is a big part of that in terms of like the rest of the fourth industrial revolution stack, where you have AI, machine learning, deep learning, sort of the classes of smart technologies, IoT, 5G, blockchain. All of these other things are going to play roles in the new ecosystem. But XR is really the content component of that. And the thing that makes XR really fascinating from a technical geek standpoint is the scale that it needs to operate on, the amount of bandwidth it consumes, the amount of processing it requires to be able to do anything, the amount of data that it collects and needs to be stored is just absolutely, it's an order of magnitude more than what we're used to. And that's why you see so much infrastructure being built out around it.
Speaking of order of magnitudes, do you see AR as AR and the overlay of the entire, I guess we'd call it real world versus the augmented world, but
physical world?
Does AR basically eclipse VR in user install, or do you think that as time goes on, more people are going to want to put the headset on? Say that one more time.
I just got a message. My internet connection was unstable. Did I glitch for a second or?
You
Yeah,
did,
it's
but you're back.
Anyway, so I'm glad you brought up the AR aspect of it, because I that, you know, from a layperson's standpoint, people who have not been initiated or onboarded to either VR or AR, they don't really understand, you know, you can't be told what the matrix is. You know, it's like you have to put it on, you have to experience it for yourself.
Take the red
And
pill.
that AR is in many ways the inverse of VR, where it's projected onto your world instead of you being inside of a world. And what you're talking about there, I think, is going to bring an incredible benefit, but it also comes with, if it's not done well, it's going to be utterly dystopian. Like what you're talking about is what I call annotated reality. And that can be a personal experience where you want information and you call upon it. So you're walking down the street and you're like, okay, I need a path to where I'm going. There are things in the AR cloud. And for people who don't know what the AR cloud is, it's basically the world's digital twin has layers of data on top of it that allow you to access experiences as you move through the world. And so some of that will be practical, some of that will be commercial, some of that will be personal, some of that will be historical. And they're called anchors. And the really simple way to understand it is in HTML, a link, which we just call links, are anchor tags because they're pinning a place. But in the digital twin of the world, they call it spatial anchors, or Apple's name for it is AR anchors. But the principle is that you pin a data point to a geographic location, and that as a person walking through the world, let's say you are a historical marker or any place that has data in it that you can consume and experience. You can watch a hologram make a speech. You can see a reenactment of something, or you could see an ad or whatever. And so sometimes when people make these concept videos of what the future looks like, and it's just this constant noise. And I think that as long as people have the ability to filter out and allow in what they want and opt into data and not have it forced upon them, then AR cloud will be a wonderful thing. And
that's
visually
kind of where AI
spectacular.
comes in, isn't it? I just gave a speech about this on Facebook. I mean, I think for me, it's your personal AI is going to become increasingly important because as you walk through the world, what your preferences are, how you want to be communicated to, when you want to be communicated, in what manner is going to be concierge, I call it, for you, right? So you're not constantly assaulted. And then the problem as a brand is, how do I cut through that if I want to reach this person and they have effectively banned me if I do it wrong the first time? So you got to get it right. But also on an ongoing basis, like how do brands play in that space? I think that's a really interesting, subject in and of itself. But yes, I think for me, Sean, the world AR, AR is I think the distinction between the two might blur because, AR is a 3D overlay onto the existing world, or an overlay, whereas VR is immersive. But I think you can easily switch between the two. And once you get used to, and Google and others are doing a great job of I cannot say this word, acclimatizing people to the concept of digital overlay on the world without people realizing it's AR. I mean, the lenses do it, the snap lenses, like those are all AR. I don't think if you ask somebody, is it augmented reality? They probably wouldn't know. But if they're like, oh, have you tried snap lenses? Yeah, they're really fun, right? So I think people are getting used to the idea of a digital overlay using those kinds of technology, like that kind of approach. And as that happens, and they're used to the idea of like a dimension over the physical world, going into then a more immersive experience is going to be a natural progression. And especially if, back to what Ben is doing, if it's more of a web immersive experience, or you can do it either way, there's going to be a blurring between those two. And I think, AR has a lot of utilitarian aspects to it, directions down the street, but it also has aspects of, I just want to be entertained today, and I'm going to go back to my sea monkeys. I want to see the world as sea monkeys today. So everybody who walks by me is going to look like a sea monkey, and they're going to overlay that onto them, right? So, I mean, AR can be entertaining, but it also has utilitarian, but it's often out of your space. But not when it comes to e-commerce, though, because e-commerce and AR, that I want to put that sofa in my space and see what it will look like is also AR. So it also has a utilitarian aspect. But as soon as you're doing that, the leap from that to going, I'm completely immersed in a total 360 experience is not that great. So I think it's more of a spectrum than a division between AR and VR. And the pass-through helmets, visors are helping that too, because they also are it's mixed reality, really, right? It's just a spectrum of experiences.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
When the hybrid devices start coming out, I mean, that's
Right.
pretty much what was leaked by Apple a year ago, in terms of they wanted to get everybody off their back about, like, 2020 was going to be the year that AR glasses came out. They wanted to reset those expectations, but they did say that they were coming out with a Quest-like hybrid VR AR experience, which that's something we don't even have on the market yet, except at the very top end. Like Vario has their X3 is an AR VR hybrid thing, but that's an industrial $10,000 headset. But to have a several $100 headset that does the same thing, and again, this is also something where when you talk about the immersive web and you talk about the spatial web and you talk about the AR cloud, one of the things that's coming with WebXR that isn't fully baked yet is the WebAR module within it. And the reason WebXR is WebXR instead of WebVR is because they did come out with WebVR, but it didn't support what it needed to for the long run. And now WebVR is deprecated, and sadly with it a lot of the original sites that haven't updated to WebXR have done that. But this evolution we're going to see 1, 2, 3 years from now is that the ability to go immersive in WebXR, then come out of immersive, it'll allow that toggling between it. And then
seamless.
You can't be immersive and walk down the street, but you can be immersed in the same device and walk down the street. And then spatial anchors can provide some kind of value to you. And, we don't want a Black Mirror type of scenario where this becomes a scary or a bad thing. It needs to serve people, and it needs to be built around an ethic of these are private tools to consume information privately, and that as long as you get to stay in control, that you're not bombarded with or you're not subjugated by that apparatus, then this is going to be a wonderful
I had
evolution.
to laugh, Ben, because when you said it's here to serve people, I thought about the old Twilight Zone episode. Are we being served as well? Because the privacy issues with that, we can be the dinner that everybody eats. So interesting double there.
That XR is a cookbook, and but that's also kind of why I'm in it, is because we don't want it to be that. Like I think the potential is so wonderful, but like everybody sort of needs to come to fight the good fight to make sure that this new technology is used for good, and that it can have a real positive impact on how humanity learns and interacts and
I could see AR has the ability, well, I mean, all of this has the ability to be used for good or evil, but AR could get overwhelming with those spatial anchors, and I picture walking one block in New York City and being told by 63 different locations that they're the original Ray's Pizza.
That's the point. I mean, it needs to be concierge. You can't be constantly assaulted. Although I do think the human brain, as I have often done, I go back to my little nephew who I watch as a guinea pig with all of this, growing up like this. He is already multitasking so much, and I think he's going to be addicted to the multitasking, the constant this. Like he's already playing the video game while he's watching a Twitch stream in his screen while he's doing it, and the TV is on at the same time. Like he cannot disengage from that. I think that there is a Black Mirror aspect to the addiction to constant stimulation that this will happen. But that's another episode, I think.
I'm worried
Not
about
to be
the addiction,
dystopian.
but I'm also really looking forward to the day where I walk into Lens Crafters and at the end of my eye exam, when I'm getting new lenses, they go, "Would you like anti-glare and would you like the AR?" Instead of having to buy an Apple device.
I don't think they're going to ask you. I think it'll be built in because it'll be subsidized by some company, just like when you buy a computer now or a TV now, it's got installed software.
That would be
right.
That would be amazing.
Right. I mean, the TVs at Costco are what, $500 for a 10,000 size TV. It's because they're subsidized by the companies that are gathering the data,
right?
Not because it's that cheap to make. So, I mean, I think eyeglasses will probably go the same way. Anyway, on that dystopian
it's a matter of the user staying in control. I mean, a perfect real world analogy is you're in any restaurant row in any city and you're looking to have dinner and you're walking down the street and all you want to do is just kind of look at the menus and you don't want maitre d's coming up to you and shoving your hands. You want to let me have my space for a moment. But sometimes you're open to that sales pitch and you're strolling along and you're like, "Oh, we're going out to dinner. What do you got?" And then you're open to having that pitch. Sometime, so with AR, you should be able to politely dismiss anything that is getting in your face.
Leave me alone.
But at the same time, give you the information and be like, "Aha, they have, spicy tuna rolls."
Or Yelp knows. Yelp knows your preferences and it filters those preferences for you. It filters that info for you by your preference. So it anticipates, that's the AI, right? It anticipates based on your past experiences and preferences and choices. It knows that you have absolutely zero interest in vegan restaurants. You're a carnivore. And so instead of getting that ad from the carnivore or from the vegan restaurant, it goes, "I'm not even going to show it to you because it's been filtered properly." Right. So it can't necessarily anticipate your mood, but it can anticipate your preferences.
I have the opposite problem because I'm a carnivore and my wife's a vegetarian.
And you need,
So getting a place that isn't all meat.
Right.
And has a menu that isn't steamed vegetables for the vegetarian is a criteria that we would probably have as a preset.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think that's the point of it, right? It's anticipatory based on preferences and it's a learning algorithm versus, here's 10,000 ads just thrown at you and you get to sift through whichever ones they are and it gives you no guidance. Agreed. That must be difficult then. I can't imagine trying to find restaurants at both. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting though is fancier restaurants are the ones that are guilty of not having the variety. You can go into dive.
Wow, there's a bigger profit margin on meat and fancy stuff.
But if you go to a fancy restaurant, it's like, "Oh, well, we have pasta and steamed vegetables."
If you want the largest menu on the planet Earth, I think it's Cheesecake Factory. They have something for everyone. So we could AR VR the Cheesecake Factory menu and literally spend a month trying to decide what we wanted to eat.
All I hear is Gordon Ramsay yelling. Gordon Ramsay yells at that. Not too many choices on the menu. That's his standard, kitchen nightmares thing. Anyway. All right. Well, Ben, I want to thank you for your time. Where can people find out more about the WebXR Awards? I mean, there's WebXRAwards.com, right?
Well, yeah, WebXRAwards.com. If you have a Quest or a Quest 2, check it out in your browser. You can pick up the statues and look and see what the nominations are. You can throw the statues into the abyss and watch them fall. And that's the event is February.
Say that one more time. You just locked up on us, Ben. Say when the event is one more time. You locked up on us.
I said that the event is February 20th. It's hosted by Julie Smithson and Sophia Mishasha is holding the virtual red carpet in advance where she's going to be interviewing some WebXR folks in advance of the ceremony. And we're also going to have what's called a multiverse where we're going to stream event into as many different VR platforms as somebody wants to host a watch party in, and then to the extent we can stream those back into the event. There'll be latency, of course, but nonetheless, we want to have that sort of full circle experience where we have real world people with cameras and faces and not avatars for the event, but to put that into the metaverse where people can enjoy it as a social experience because everybody's remote right now, but
Right.
VR really gives us the ability to come together. Even though we're cartoons, we're hanging out. And so to have the idea of a watch party,
Cool.
you know, it's very meta.
Very fun, Ben.
We will definitely link that in the description of this podcast, and
Yeah.
looking forward to it. I actually signed up this morning. I RSVP'd this morning because I hopped on just to take a look around and was like, oh, I have to go. I absolutely have to go. So looking forward to checking it out.
So glad to have you, and thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
You are our first guest forever and ever. This will be your our
I'm
inaugural
honored.
interview. So we appreciate your time and are excited, looking forward to the awards. And thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you. All right. Likewise. Bye-bye.